We all have adversity in our lives. I doubt if you really, if you know somebody, any friend or anybody that you talk to, there's no lack of adversity. And by the way, that's good, because it's what teaches us how to get back up. You fall down, you get back up. It always happens. And you get certain gifts in life, and you want to take advantage of those. But I guess my advice on adversity and success would be to be proud not of your gifts, but of your hard work and your choices. So, you may be, the kinds of gifts you get, you might be really good at math. It might be really easy for you. That's a kind of gift. But practicing that math and taking it to the next step, that could be very challenging and hard, and take a lot of sweat. That's a choice. You can't really be proud of your gifts because they were given to you. You can be grateful for them and thankful for them. But your choices, you choose to work hard. You choose to do hard things. Those are choices that you can be proud of.
When people think about going to sporting events, and I'll use this as an example, you don't remember the jump shots after a while. You don't remember the home runs. You don't remember the touchdowns. You don't remember the score. You remember the experience. Yeah. We remember who took us. Our first game with our mom or our dad. We remember how we felt when we won that game. Going to a sporting event, it's one of the few places where you're allowed to stand up and scream at the top of your lungs, and you're encouraged to scream as loud as you want. And if someone hits a game-winning jumper, you're hugging people and high-fiving people you've never seen in your life and you'll never see again. Yeah. And you're walking out of the arena, singing and chanting and screaming. And if you lose that game, you're bummed out, and the entire city or the entire school can be bummed out. So when we sell to Mavericks, we don't sell basketball. We sell unique experiences. And so you've got to understand in your business exactly what the differentiation is and what the compelling aspect of that business is. But think about what you do as a consumer. What is it that makes you make the choices that you make? Why do you buy a certain thing? Why do you shop a certain place? Why do you go to a certain website? Those are the keys.
Well, in 1973, the Washington Post company had gone public in 1971, right about the Pentagon Papers time. But in 73, the Nixon administration was, through B.B. Rebozo, who was a pal of Nixon's, they were challenging the licenses of 2 of the Florida television stations the Post owned. So the stock went from 37 down to 16. Now, at 16, there were about 5 million shares outstanding. So the whole Washington Post company was selling for $80 million. And that included the newspaper, 4 big TV stations, Newsweek, and some other assets, and no debt to speak of. So the Washington Post company, which was intrinsically worth $400 or $500 million, was selling for about 80 million in the market. We bought most of our stock at about the equivalent of 100 million in the market. And it was ridiculous. I mean, you had a business that unquestionably was worth 4 or 5 times what it was selling for. And Nixon wasn't going to put them out of business.
When you're doing these analyses then and now, do you have computers that help you, or how did you actually read all? Did you just get printed materials, or how did you in those days get the materials to read about the Washington Post? And how do you do it today?
Well, pretty much the same way, except there's fewer opportunities now. But I met Bob Woodward back, and he'd just come out with All the President's Men, and all of a sudden, below 30 years of age, he was getting quite wealthy, and we had breakfast or lunch over at the Madison Hotel. And he said, "What do I do with this money?" And I said, investing is just about assigning yourself the right story. I said, imagine Ben Bradley this morning said to you, what is the Washington Post company worth? What would you do? You have to write the story in a month. You'd go out and interview TV brokers and newspaper brokers and the owners, and you'd try and value each asset. I said, that's what I do. I assign myself the right story. And it's nothing more than that. Now, there's some stories I can't write. If you ask me to write a story on, what is some glamorous but non-profit making business worth, I don't know how to write that story. But if you ask me to write a story on what is Potomac Electric Power worth or something like that, I can write the story. And that's what I'm doing every day. I'm assigning myself a story, and then I go out and...
It wasn't so long ago that, I was a student and, sitting in a seat in an auditorium like you guys are here today. listening to, I remember very specifically this time when Bill Gates came to talk at Harvard, and I was just like, wow, how do you do that? But the trick is that the media likes to sensationalize this as if you have some eureka moment or you are some singular person who can build something on your own, and that's just not how the world works. When I was in school, I built a lot of stuff that I just liked building. There was not a single moment when I had some revelation that Facebook was going to be awesome. That's not maybe how the media or movies or whatever would like to portray things. It's much less exciting. But the reality is, I think most services in the world that reach the scale that Facebook has, you start off building something that you care about, and you don't necessarily think it's going to be that big. I didn't. I built Facebook, the first version of Facebook, for my college community because I wanted to be able to connect with the people at my school. And I remember very clearly talking to my friends at the time and saying, how cool is it that we have built this community for our school? One day it's going to be awesome when somebody else builds this for the world, because something like this needs to exist for the world. But it didn't even occur to me that my friends and I might be able to play a role in doing that, right? Because we were college students, right? I mean, we didn't have any engineers to work with or servers or resources or anything like that. And there are these huge companies that deliver products for hundreds of millions of people, right? I always assumed that it was going to be like Microsoft or Google or someone would build this for the world. And what basically just happened is at each step along the way, we just kind of kept doing the next thing and growing from there. And there were teams inside these other companies that thought social media was important and were working on it. But there were all these different memes and narratives in the world. People would say, oh, well, this is just a fad. People are going to use it, but then they're going to stop. So, so a lot of the teams who were working on didn't take it that seriously, or, the higher ups in those companies didn't care, so they didn't get resources, and we just kept going and going. And then people would say, all right, fine. So maybe people are using it, but it's never going to make any money, right? I mean, social media doesn't make any money. And we just kind of kept going and going, and then pretty soon we had a service that was bigger than any of these other ones, and that kind of is how we are here where we are. There's no magic. A lot of times I think people just get afraid because often your dream is it seems like it's so far off, but if you just kind of focus on building stuff that you think is good and you keep on going at each step along the way and don't let people deter you from that, and you just really care about what you're doing and kind of don't give up at each step along the way, then I think that's how you build something good.
I mean, I was just somebody that experienced the bad experience of traveling on airlines. I was actually trying to get to the BVI, to British Virgin Islands, one day from Puerto Rico, and the same lovely lady was waiting for me, and I'd been away for 3 weeks, and American Airlines bumped the flight. And so I went to the back of the airport, I hired a plane, I hired a blackboard. I wrote Virgin Airlines one way, $29 to the BVI, went around all the people who'd been bumped, and I filled my first plane. And that got me thinking, that airlines do bump people. They don't care about you or me, particularly in the air. And so so I then rang up Boeing and said, do you have any second-hand 747s?
No kidding. I mean, it was literally that you just sat in the airport and said, I'm starting an airline right now because I'm frustrated.
Exactly. And I think most of the best entrepreneurial ideas come out of frustration. I think, if you're frustrated about something, the best way of sorting it out is get out and do it, and you've got yourself a business.
I ask everybody to not think in 2 to 3 year time frames, but to think in 5 to 7 year time frames. To not think about, when somebody says to me, congratulates Amazon on a good quarter, which is a very common thing to say. You meet somebody, they're being nice, they looked at your financial results for the quarter, they're like, good quarter. I say thank you. But what I'm thinking to myself is, that quarter, those quarterly results were actually pretty much fully baked about 3 years ago. And so like today, I'm working on, a quarter that is going to happen in 2020, not next quarter. Next quarter, for all practical purposes, is done already, and it's probably been done for a couple of years. And so if you start to think that way, it changes how you spend your time, how you plan, where you put your energy, and your ability to look around corners gets better. So many things improve if you can take a long term. By the way, it's not natural for humans. So it's a discipline that you have to build. The kind of, get rich slowly schemes are not big sellers on infomercials. And so that's something that you have to sort of steel yourself for and discipline and teach over time.
Have you had failures?
Failures? Yes. No, what I say to my children, you need to have failures, but try to make small failures. Small mistakes, also in business and in life. Not to make big mistakes.
You learn from mistakes?
Always. And from the mistakes of the others, you need to learn also. It's more important to learn of other mistakes that make your mistakes to learn.
When I first started as a broadcaster, I was 19, very insecure, thrown into television, pretending to be Barbara Walters, looking nothing like her, and still going to college. So I do all my classes in the morning from 8 to 1, and then in the afternoon I work from 2 to 10 and did the 6 o'clock news. And would stay up and study and all that stuff, until 1, 2, or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then just start the routine all over again. And my classmates were so jealous of me that I remember taking my little $115 paycheck, and at the time I thought it was really a lot, but taking $115 and trying to appease them. I would always, anytime anybody needed money, I was always offering, oh, you need $10, or taking them out for pizza, ordering pizza for the class and things like that. Trying that whole disease to please, that's where it was the worst for me, I think, because I wanted to be accepted by them and could not be, because first of all, I didn't have the time. They wanted me to pledge, and I didn't have the time to pledge. I didn't have the time to be a part of all the other college activities or a part of that whole lifestyle. And it was very difficult for me socially, really one of the worst times of my life, because I was trying to fit in school and be a part of that culture, but also trying to build a career in television. It's very difficult for me to even see myself as successful, because I still see myself as in the process of becoming successful. To me, successful is getting to the point where you are absolutely comfortable with yourself, and it does not matter how many things you have acquired. The ability to learn to say no and not to feel guilty about it, to me, is about the greatest success I have achieved. The fact that I have, in the public side, done whatever is fine. It's all a part of a process for growing for me. But to me, to have the kind of internal strength and internal courage it takes to say, no, I will not let you treat me this way, is what success is all about. It's the same thing that prevents you from being abused as a child, that prevents you from being abused as an adult, that allows you to build success for yourself. I will not be treated this way. I demand only the best for myself. You are worthy to say no. That it's okay if you say no. It's okay if you say no and then people don't like you. That's really okay. The important thing is how you feel about what you're doing, how you feel about yourself. It's a long struggle, though. It's a long struggle. And I'm just hoping that, in the work that I do on the show and the speaking that I do around the country, and that young people who are watching this can get the lesson sooner than I did. Because it's painful, because you keep repeating it over and over and over until you get it right. And what I found is that every time you have to repeat the lesson, it gets worse. Because I call it God trying to get your attention, the universe trying to get your attention. So we didn't get your attention the first time, so we're going to have to hit you a little harder this time. So I'm still doing it. I'm still learning.
I actually think you should think twice before starting certain types of businesses. So I think there are probably too many bad businesses getting started and not enough good ones. So I don't think there's anything about entrepreneurship per se that is good. I was talking to one of my friends a few years ago. I was asking him, what do you want to be doing in 5 or 10 years? Oh, it's really clear, I want to be an entrepreneur. That's like saying I want to be rich, I want to be famous. And I don't think
those are good things. Being rich and famous are good.
they're not good as direct goals. Like if you have that as your sole goal, you're unlikely to, I think, really succeed. And so I think you become an entrepreneur because you're working on an important problem nobody else is working on. I think you should start a business if you have if you're working on a problem that otherwise would not get solved.
In the future, you will not make money by the service you offer. How good service you do. It's going to be how efficient you are. And Alibaba, we are a company right now have 20, that's not including the financial group. We have 25 units, 25 different business units. Maybe in the future we might have 50, I don't know, right? We have that many units, and we are almost in everywhere. We control our head counts by efficiency we have. We only have 24,000 people. I tell you a story. The thing I feel proud of, 2 years ago, we started to have a budgeting meeting, and I asked my team, well, year 2012, if we want to double all the numbers we have, how many people we need? And people say 7,800 new people. I said, no, check it again. And then they say 6,800 people. I said, no. And my people ask me, how many you want? I said, 200. They said, no, impossible, 200. My answer is that for years, we discussed we should hire more people for future. I've heard this for 10 years. Now, let's just do the efficient thing. And I told all the management, if we have net headcount over 200, even 1 people, we should have no bonus for whole year for year 2012. And then we start the plan. Year 2012, we net lose 1,000 people. All the number doubled. And I say, if we want to create more jobs for the others, let's keep our head counts. Make sure, because right now we have over 500 million registered users on Taobao. No matter how many people we hire ourselves, we cannot be, always not enough people. So we can focus on technology, focusing on making sure the platform is efficiency, focusing on everybody makes the difference in the platform. That will make the difference.
My job, one of my jobs as the leader of Amazon, is to encourage people to be bold. And people love to focus on things that aren't yet working. And that's good, it's human nature. That kind of divine discontent can be very helpful. But you really, it's incredibly hard to get people to take bold bets. And you need to encourage that. And if you're going to take bold bets, they're going to be experiments. And if they're experiments, you don't know ahead of time whether they're going to work. Experiments are by their very nature prone to failure. But big successes, a few big successes, compensate for dozens and dozens of things that didn't work. So, bold bets, AWS, Kindle, Amazon Prime, our third-party seller business, all of those things are examples of bold bets that did work, and they pay for a lot of experiments. I've made billions of dollars of failures at Amazon.com, literally billions of dollars of failures. And you might remember Pets.com or Cosmo, or give myself a root canal with no anesthesia very easily. None of those things are fun, but they don't matter. What really matters is companies that don't continue to experiment, companies that don't embrace failure, they eventually get in a desperate position where the only thing they can do is make a kind of Hail Mary bet at the very end of their corporate existence. Whereas companies that are, making bets all along, even, big bets, but not bet the company bets. I don't believe in bet the company bets. That's when you're desperate. That's the last thing you can do.
My goal is to simplify complexity. I just want to build stuff that really simplifies our base human interaction. Twitter was around communication and visualizing what was happening in the world in real time. Square was allowing everyone to accept the form of payment that people have in their pocket today, which is a credit card. So we've built the simplest way to accept credit cards, and it's just this little tiny device that we give away for free, and you just download some software from the App Store and you plug it in to your mobile phone or your iPad, and suddenly you can take credit cards. So if you're a tax accountant or a lawyer or a doctor or even a hairstylist, you can now accept credit cards.
You're going to have to be, flexible and nimble in your life. That's the characteristic you want to get. It's not important whether you know what the product is of the du jour or what's hot and what's not, or how to execute this particular thing. You need to learn business, and you need to learn how to question and have an open mind. You need to know the process of thinking about things. You notice how people can go around and be an investor in this industry, turn around and without doing anything, be a great investor in another industry, or some CEO who one day is running Ford Motor Company, then can run Boeing or different industries. Because it's not, the most important thing is not the particular characteristics of the particular industry or thing. It's how to be a good CEO, just like it's how to have presentation skills, how to be a good manager, how to be a good subordinate, how to be a good partner, how to use people, how to be usable by people, and those are the things that you have to learn. Now, you can only learn it. You can't learn it abstractly, and you can't really learn it in school. You have to learn it by doing.
I remember asking my dad I wanted new basketball shoes because I was a basketball junkie back then. He's like, well, your shoes work. If you want a new pair of tennis shoes, you have to go out there and get a job. And I'm like, Dad, I'm 12 years old, and it just so happens he was playing poker with his buddies, and one of his buddies was like, well, I got a job for you. I've got these garbage bags that we distribute. You can sell them door to door. I'm like, okay. And it was when I was selling them and realizing that I liked to sell and that I could sell, and that I recognized that selling was about providing a service and creating value for people, that I knew that I would, literally back then, I knew that I could always succeed. I remember I was 16, I think, when I started a stamp company and started going to stamp shows and trade shows and just working a little bit harder than other people and trading up from one stamp to the next. I remember one time I started with a quarter and bought a stamp and left with $50, thinking, hey, if I could do this, I could do anything. And it's not that everything worked. I failed a lot, but I never ever felt like I wouldn't be able to work hard enough to succeed.
I probably took things to an extreme. But yeah, I gave up on personal relationships in a big respect because I really was on a mission. And once I realized I was going, when I sold my first company, I bought a lifetime pass on American Airlines, and my goal was just to party with like a rock star in as many countries with as many people as I possibly could. Then I went back and got involved in the streaming business, and I remember sitting there and telling, we had probably 10 employees, and look, the streaming thing I think is going to be really big, and so we really have to focus, and there's going to be some sacrifices. And if you're willing to make those sacrifices, let's go. And if you're not, I understand, you make your own decisions. And I was willing to make those sacrifices. And, it all turned out great in the long run, but during that time, it wasn't always easy, and wasn't always, it was tough sometimes.
There are probably a lot of people who can run Microsoft and do a reasonable job. When I was growing up, Bill Gates was my hero.
Oh, come on.
Yes.
He's like Darth Vader. He's not Luke Skywalker.
No.
He's the bad guy.
No, he is not. Bill Gates ran one of the most mission-driven companies that I can think of, right? And right now I think Microsoft, their mission is less focused than it used to be. But when I was thinking about what I wanted to be when I grew up, Microsoft I thought had a great mission. Put a computer on every desktop and in every office, right? Or maybe it was every desktop in every home. there are companies that define themselves by a way of doing things, right? There's like the HP way that I was talking about, and there are companies that define themselves by making a concrete change in the world. And Microsoft did that, and I have a huge amount of respect for him for doing that. And he pushed them, and it was an incredibly inspiring company during the time that he was doing that. I think that they still are doing a lot of things, but I think that they've lost some of the focus. And I don't know. I think he's like one of the greatest visionaries that our industry has ever had.
Running your own race demands trusting yourself even when others don't. Because guess what? There are a lot of people, good people who love you, who trust you, and who you love and trust, who want the best for you. And you'll come to them with some ideas about what you want to do and how you want to do it, and they're going to say, that's crazy. Just like when I left my first engineering job at Kraft and I was telling my grandfather I was going back to business school, and he said, that's a great paying job, that's crazy. And when I finished business school and decided to join the tumultuous world of investment banking, my friends and my family spoke up with concerns about my sanity. And when I left Goldman Sachs right after we'd gone public to set up a private equity firm called Vista, my mentors and colleagues at Goldman Sachs thought I was crazy. And to top it all off, when I told them I'm going to start a firm, we're going to focus on enterprise software and not be diversified like all other private equity firms, I was going to hire a team of smart, young, talented people who'd never done this before. Everyone knew I was certifiable. And I did this, of course, in the spring of 2000, about 2 months before the entire tech bubble crashed. Well, all I can tell you is I've never been mad at these folks. In fact, I'm grateful for their advice and their concern. Because in their caution, I found my courage. In their doubts, I found my resolve. And in their warnings, I found my voice and chartered my own journey. And I'm proud of the Vista story. We take risks, we do things differently, and we listen to our own voice. We run our own race, and it has worked. We are now considered to be the #1 private equity firm on the planet and have been so for the last decade.
First of all, focus on it, right? I think you basically get what you spend your time doing, right? I want the company to build 3 products this year. We're going to work on a few others because people are interested in them, but those are the 3 things that I'm spending my product time on, right? You get what you put into it. If you spend a third of your time trying to make the people around you better through getting better people, mentoring, getting them to be better, getting the best people in your organization into more impactful roles, then I think over time that just accrues and you get a better organization.
What did you learn from starting so early, and what have you learned from your failures? Because the failures is kind of the only way you really learn, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I usually this is the correct way to ask the question, because I usually get asked the question, how did you succeed? And I really don't feel like I've succeeded. I feel like I've sort of failed systematically, at least in terms of my own goals and what I set out to do. But then somehow failure has kind of transformed into some weird kind of success that I wasn't really expecting.
We probably spend less money in marketing than any company our size in the world. We have a tiny marketing department, and everyone says, well, why Oracle's all about sales and marketing. We are the largest employer of MIT and Caltech engineers in the world. We are the largest employer of Stanford and Harvard and CMU mathematicians in the world. We are overwhelmingly dominated by engineering at Oracle. The idea that we are a sales and marketing company, which people will sometimes write about quite often, is ludicrous on the face of it, because all of our customers who buy Oracle already have it. And if you already have Oracle, there's nothing a salesman can tell you about how great it is to make you buy more. GE already uses it. The Defense Department already uses it. All of our customers, 98% of our sales or more, are to existing Oracle customers. If we don't have the right product, people don't buy more. We will, before the acquisition, we spent $3 billion a year in software engineering. The company is all about engineering. It's the only thing that works.
You can cheat somebody, you can misrepresent something, you can go manipulate the political system to get an advantage. But if you want to be successful over a long period of time, I believe you need to focus first of all on creating value for others. And I've had people, well, that's naive, that's utopian. No, it isn't, because why will the customers want to pay you anything over a long period unless you're creating value for them? Why would your employees want to work for you? Or if they didn't have any alternative, why do they want to give their best efforts? Why do they want to get excited? Why would they wake up at night with ideas? If you're in a community, a plant in a community, unless you're creating value for that community, why would the community want you there? If you're polluting and hurting people and not contributing anything to the community. So long-term success starts with being dedicated to creating value for others. It's not altruism. It's my whole philosophy is to have a system of mutual benefit where both parties gain, a society based on win-win.
Mr. Carnegie, you have stated in previous interviews that there are no limitations to mental capacity except those an individual sets up in his own mind. And you have explained this by saying that defeat can be converted into a priceless asset if one takes the right attitude toward it. Will you now explain what is the right attitude?
First of all, let me say that the right attitude toward defeat is that which refuses to accept it as anything more than temporary. And this is an attitude that one can best maintain by so developing his willpower that he looks upon defeat as a challenge to test his mettle. That challenge should be accepted as a signal that has been deliberately hoisted to inform him that his plans need mending. Defeat should be looked upon in precisely the same manner that one accepts the unpleasant experience of physical pain. For it is obvious that physical pain is nature's way of informing one that something needs attention and correction. Pain, therefore, may be a blessing and not a curse. The same is true of the mental anguish one experiences when overtaken by defeat. While the feeling is unpleasant, it may be, nevertheless, beneficial, because it serves as a signal by which one may be stopped from going in the wrong direction.
I see your logic, but defeat sometimes is so definite and severe that it has the effect of destroying one's initiative and self-reliance. What is to be done in such a circumstance?
Here is where the principle of self-discipline comes to one's rescue. The well-disciplined person allows nothing to destroy his belief in himself and permits nothing to stop him from rearranging his plans and moving ahead when he is defeated. You see, he changes his plans if they need change, but not his purpose. If one has mastered the principle of organized thought, one knows that the power of will is equal to all the circumstances of life, and he allows nothing to destroy his will to win.
I knew I was wired to be excited about business. How or why, I don't know, but and there's certain guys that have the genetics to jump out of the gym, right? There's certain guys, that when they golf, they have the muscle memory and the discipline. Dirk Nowitzki may not be the most talented guy in the NBA, but his discipline and his focus to do what's necessary to be successful, he's willing to do, and combine it with being 7 feet tall and being skilled, it makes him an amazing basketball player. So it's understanding what your skill set is, finding the right place to use those skills, and then going for it. Will that make you $250,000? It depends if you pick the right industry. But whatever industry you pick, if you outwork everybody, if you try to be a little smarter than everybody, if you try to be a better salesperson than everybody, if you try to be better prepared than everybody, you've got your best chance. Because if you don't do it and somebody else does, I have the saying, work like someone's trying to take it all away from you. Work like someone's spending 24 hours, working 24 hours to take it all away from you. And that's kind of the way I look at it.
I think that's one of the strongest things you can cultivate as an entrepreneur is to not rely on luck, but cultivating an ability to recognize fortunate situations when they're occurring. Odeo was a very fortunate situation. Could have taken that idea, not told it to Ev, not told it to Biz, not told it to Noah and all my other coworkers at Odeo, and tried to start my own company with that idea. But the fortunate situation was I was working with some really amazing people. and we had a great team. So of course, it makes sense to start there. The fortunate situation for Square was that in 2008, the end of 2008, the entire market was crashing down. Like all of these abstractions we built upon abstraction upon abstraction upon abstraction in the financial world, which no single human understood, were now falling apart. And suddenly we were getting back to basics, back to fundamentals. Management teams were being asked to leave, banks were failing, people were clarifying around, like, we need to start getting innovative, we need to start treating our customers so poorly, we need to stop, encouraging bad behavior to reap fees. Like, we need to really turn this whole thing around. And anytime there's a recession or a depression, that's a great time to innovate, start a company, start a project, do anything. So, we recognize that time, and at the same time, my co-founder Jim, recontacted me. I've known him since I was 15 years old. He was my boss when I was 15 years old, and he's like, Jack, I want to talk to you. I want to build an electronic car company. I'm like, that's interesting. And he was thinking about it because the car industry was failing as well. And like, he was like, why don't we just give these car companies to well-seasoned entrepreneurs? Like, why don't we give Ford to Steve Jobs? And like,
that would be amazing.
X, yeah, it would be amazing. And like, GM to Ellison or like whatnot. And he's like, and also I want to start an electronic car company. I'm like, that's ambitious. But in that moment, we decided not to start an electronic car company, but we wanted to do something together. And we kept having these weekly conversations about what that thing was. And I was researching a lot with finance and healthcare because I was looking at, doing something in those spaces. And Jim called me one day, one of us scheduled meetings, and he said, I just lost a glass sale. He's an artist, he sells glass. And I lost the sale because I couldn't accept a credit card. And here he was talking on his iPhone, his general purpose computer, and I was talking on my iPhone. And like, we couldn't
figure out. A 1 gigahertz computer sitting in the palm of your hand, but no way to accept credit cards.
Yeah, he couldn't accept $2,000 from someone who wanted to pay him.
Right.
Like, why is that? So we decided that we wanted to answer that question, and we did a bunch of research, and I started writing some server code, and we hired a guy to write some iPhone code, and Jim built some hardware, and in a month we had it was actually quite a big device that plugged into the audio jack of your iPhone and could swipe a card, take a payment. It would go through the merchant process and then generate a receipt with a map on it. And I went around, I showed it to a bunch of investors, and they were all amazed that it could even work. So we decided to really focus on it and make it a company. And it really just comes down to like recognizing that fortunate situation and recognizing the people around you that could help and just owning it.
I've been in business for 69 years, since I was 12. And every time, after the first dozen or so businesses, I realized that the only way to get ahead was to do things differently than the way it was being done. And then I came to learn, which I finally learned at my ripe young age, that if you do things differently, success will follow you like your shadow. And you can't get rid of it. So that's what I did. So people doubted me because people just didn't do what I would do. It's a matter of finding out what it is that an industry does and identifying the opportunity as to how to do it differently, and then being enough of a risk taker to actually do it differently. So people doubted me because nobody thought of doing it the way that I did, and they were satisfied with the status quo, and I'm never satisfied with the status quo.
You're not going to have fun every minute of every day. I don't care what job you take, any job you take. I don't care how well rewarded you are. I don't care anything about that. It won't happen all the time, but you better be having fun in what you do. Don't take the next job or don't do the next startup because you should. Do it because you want to. Because you can think of nothing better, more exciting, more energizing to get up every day and go do than whatever it is that you selected. Be patient and be urgent be patient when you get the first signs that it's not fun, because time must be measured. Constantly be improving yourself, because only by improving yourself will you maybe find that next idea. I'm sure there are many people in this audience who'd like to do a startup, and yet the first law of doing a startup is you got to have an idea. But if you're having fun, if you're building capabilities, if you're treasuring your time, if you're building your muscle and being hardcore, the good ideas will come to you.
I mean, the key to, I think, being a good business leader is how good you are with people. I think if you can genuinely care about people, and not just your fellow directors, but the cleaning lady, the switchboard operator, everybody throughout the company. If you're a good, if you praise and don't criticize, people will flourish. So I think it's really your people skills that will set you apart. And I don't think that can be overemphasized. I think you just got to, if I'm on a Virgin plane, I will make sure that I always have a notebook in my back pocket. Make sure I get out and talk to all the staff. If they've got issues, make sure I don't just hear the issue and not write it down. Make sure those issues get written down. Talk to the passengers. If they've got issues, make sure those issues get written down.
An entrepreneur is someone who thinks differently. Someone who recognizes and understands opportunity, but combines that recognition of opportunity with solutions. And then in the end, it's all about curiosity. I've never met an entrepreneur who was successful, who wasn't extraordinarily curious.
Whatever job you're doing in life, if you're a switchboard operator, if you're cleaning the floors of a building, if you're collecting eggs for an incubator, or whatever it is, if you're positive about the job you're doing, you're going to be a much happier person, and the people around you are going to be a lot happier, and it's likely that that you won't forever be a cleaning lady, or because you're smiling, because you're happy, people will promote you, and you'll go on and do great things in life. So I think a positive attitude is essential in life, whatever your position.
Add some value. There's a true societal and business value proposition. There's a contribution. I find, and I don't do this for reasons other than the fact that you can't long-term build a viable business without making a real contribution. Most people look at, they can start a business, do an IPO, make some money. Almost always that leads to businesses that are round trips, what I call they go up and go down. To build a durable business, you really have to focus on the value proposition.
You want to be a winner, then compare yourself to the best and acknowledge that will never happen without hard work. Abe Lincoln used to say, good things may come to those who wait, but only those things left by those who hustle. If you want to be a leader, act like a leader. If you want to be respected and trusted, then demonstrate you deserve it by earning it every day. It takes courage to be accountable. Throughout my life, throughout this crisis of the past few years, I have seen many people embarrass themselves by failing to stand up, being mealy-mouthed, and acting like lemons by simply going along with the pack. I also saw plenty of people under enormous pressure who always did the right thing. Graduates, you will soon leave this wonderful community and venture into a new world to get ready for new jobs, new opportunities, and new lives. Along the way, you're going to face a lot of pressure. Pressure to go along, to get along, to toe the line, to look the other way when you see things that aren't right, and pressure to do things simply because everybody else is doing them. Never give in to that pressure. Have the fortitude to do the right thing, not the easy thing. Don't be somebody's lapdog or sycophant. Have the courage to speak the truth, even when it is unpopular. And have the courage to put yourself on the line, to strive for something meaningful, and even to risk what would be an embarrassing failure. I think Teddy Roosevelt understood this nearly a century ago when he said, and I quote, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man, now the woman, who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without erring and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end of the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat."
I visualized this for myself. When I was selling copiers door to door, I had a very clear vision of what my life was going to be like. And I encourage everyone to do it. Take a snap photo of what success looks like for you. How many employees do you have? How much are you making? Where do you live? Are you sitting at a table with world leaders? Are you standing on a stage in New York City giving a speech? And hold on to that snapshot, and you will subconsciously start to make decisions that get you there. And so my snap photo for myself when I was going door to door to sell copiers was to be self-employed, invent a product that I could sell to lots of people and not just one copier to each person, and create a business for myself that would continue to fund itself if I wasn't present. I wanted money to be generated without me having to be there. I was that specific in my vision.
I like to say my management style is problem solver in chief. And so what I do in a given day is I have a set of problems that need to be solved, and I start at the most important and work my way down. And for the problems I don't have time for, somebody else gets to solve them. Now, if somebody's already solving a problem, I don't need to get involved if the problem's getting solved. But people go, "Wow, so your day's just full of problems." I'm like, "Yeah, I've got a lot of problems." But it's sort of like how a math professor thinks of problems, right? Is that, think of a great math professor who has no math problems to solve. He's a very sad math professor. And so that's very much how I look at it. Solving problems is every problem is an opportunity for innovating and being creative and finding something new. And that's what I love to do, and I do it every day.
One does have to be focused on the short term and money coming in when creating a company, because otherwise the company will die. So I think that a lot of times people think like creating a company is going to be fun. I would say it's not. It's really not that fun. I mean, there are periods of fun, and there are periods of where it's just awful. And particularly if you're the CEO of the company, you actually have a distillation of all the worst problems in the company. There's no point in spending your time on things that are going right. So you only spend your time on things that are going wrong. And there are things that are going wrong that other people can't take care of. So you have like the worst. You have a filter for the crappiest problem in the company, the most pernicious and painful problem. So I wouldn't say I think you have to feel quite compelled to do it, and have a fairly high pain threshold. And there's a friend of mine who says like starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. And there's some truth to that. The staring into the abyss part is that you're going to be constantly facing the extermination of the company. Because most startups fail. It's like 90% arguably 99% of startups fail. So, that's the staring into the abyss part. You're constantly saying, okay, if I don't get this right, the company will die. It can be quite stressful. And then the eating glass part is you've got to do the problems. You've got to work on the problems that the company needs you to work on, not the problems you want to work on. And so that's you end up working on problems that you'd really wish you weren't working on. And so that's the eating glass part. And that goes on for a long time.
So how do you keep your focus on the big picture when you're constantly faced with, we could be out of business in a month?
Well, it's just a very small percentage of mental energy is on the big picture. Like you know where you're generally heading for, and the actual path is going to be some sort of zigzaggy thing in that direction. You try not to deviate too far from the path that you want to be on, but you're going to have to do that to some degree. But I don't want to diminish the. I mean, I think the profit motive is a good one if the rules of an industry are properly set up. So there's nothing fundamentally wrong with profit. In fact, profit just means that people are paying you more for whatever you're doing than you're spending to create it. That's a good thing. and if that's not the case, then you'll be out of business, and rightfully so. Because you're not adding enough value.
You know, I didn't have as many personal relationships as I probably would have liked. You know, I put personal relationships aside. You know, I had girlfriends where it was like me or your business.
Firstly, can you tell us, are you authentically satisfied and fulfilled? Do you have an experience in life of being successful?
I don't think that success is like a lot of people believe it is, and for any really successful person. I think that everybody's always struggling. And what happens is, you know, you just struggle at a higher level. It's like learning how to ski or play some sport, and you're just kind of doing this higher thing, but it doesn't feel like that. It just feels like I'm struggling. And I think it's, and it's a good feeling. The way I think of it is, I've always thought that it's like, in order to be successful in life, you have to cross a jungle. Or you could stay on the other side of the jungle and not cross the jungle. But if you choose to cross the jungle has all sorts of things that can do you harm and bite you and everything along those lines. And so the best way to do that is to go into that with people who can see things differently and watch themselves and struggle to make it to the other side. And then what I've discovered along the way is that it's always a struggle, and I enjoy being in the jungle. I don't want to get to the underside. I don't want to get out. So that's what it feels like to me.
Only thing that you can control that influences success in life is how hard you work, how honest you are, and how well you deal with others. You can control those variables. You can't control how lucky you are, although the more you work, the luckier you get. You have no influence on the intellectual capabilities that God did or did not give you, but you can work as hard as possible. You can be scrupulously honest so that people respect you, and you can get along with others because nobody does anything by themselves.
Did you have to pay a price, though? You personally?
Well, I think that everything is an either-or. There is a price in everything. You can study or you can go out and play. You can defer to others or you can try to hog the credit. You can be honest and suffer the consequences, or you can lie, cheat, and steal, and short-term maybe even advance. But long-term, you are better off if you work harder, you are better off if you're honest, and you are better off if you give others credit and get them to help you by helping them.
What do you tell others who try to strike that balance between family and work and volunteer efforts and anything else?
The answer of either or is invariably yes. You can't go all in one direction. You cannot walk away from your family for your career. On the other hand, if you walk away from your career for your family, you're not going to have the money to support the family. And parents all the time are making those kinds of choices between career and family. They do some of both, and you try to blend the two, and that may not be the perfect answer, but that's a practical answer that I've always told young people when they go off to college. You have to study and you have to get good grades, but you certainly should have a good time as well, because that's part of your growing up experience, and there's no point in leading life to suffer all the time. You want to enjoy life as well as the next person.